Well, welcome and thank you for taking the time to join the City of Kingston's online engagement session for the Cricket Field Baseball Diamond renovation. I am Nancy Knight, a communications officer with the city, and I will be moderating the online engagement session tonight. We had 10 people registered to join us this evening, and I see that 6 of you have already joined in, so we are going to get started with the presentation. So before we get started and I introduce our panel, I have a couple of housekeeping items to share with you. So the first is that this session is live streamed to YouTube and recorded. To protect your privacy, all participants have their video turned off and have been muted, and the chat functionality in Zoom is turned off. We also know that sometimes technology troubles can happen. There are a list of common challenges on Get Involved Kingston, including if your audio or video aren't working today. You can also adjust your view options so that you can see both the presentation and the members of the project team at the same time. If your internet connection goes down today, you can call into the meeting at the number on the screen. So please write it down just in case. The number is 647-558-0588, and the webinar ID is 899-2584-2333. You can also follow live on YouTube, where this session is closed caption. So we're going to do our best to help you with technical problems, but sometimes the easiest way to resolve the issues is to log out of Zoom and rejoin the meeting. And you can do that by using the same link that you used to join tonight. So if you have any questions at any point during this session, please feel free to use the Q&A feature. However, we will hold the answers until the end of the presentation. The Q&A feature can be found on the bar across the bottom of the screen. To ask a question, type into the question area, and when the question comes in, the project team will work to respond. And please note, if we don't get to all of your questions tonight, all of the questions and answers will be summarized by the project team and posted on the project page on Get Involved Kingston. During the Q&A, you will also have the option to raise your hand to speak and ask a question. To use this function, you can click on the Q&A and a pop-up should appear to present multiple options. You can then choose to raise a hand. If you're calling in today, press the number 9 to raise your hand. We'll be monitoring this and we'll acknowledge you and then turn on your microphone so you can ask a question or make a comment. Appearing on the screen here, you'll see our guidelines for participation. So if you've joined us before for an engagement session, they may look familiar to you. These guidelines for participation were developed as part of the city's public engagement framework and make sure that we all join together and we're respectful and open to ideas. So I'm going to leave this up on the screen for about 30 seconds so you have an opportunity to read them. So if there's any concerns for the guidelines to participation, please let me know by using the raise hand function. So I'll just pause and give you a moment. All right, thank you. Seeing no objections to the guidelines for participation, we'll proceed into this online engagement session following the guidelines for participation. I'm now going to pass the presentation over to Lori Paquin, who is the project manager.
Thanks, Nancy. Good evening, and thank you for joining us for the Cricket Field Baseball Diamond renovation presentation. The baseball diamond, located in the southwest corner of Cricket Field, south of the county courthouse, is scheduled to be renovated this fall. The updated diamond will include a new infield and backstop, fencing, covered players' benches, and spectator bleachers. My name is Lori Paquin, and I am the project manager with Parks and Shoreline for the diamond renovation. Joining us this evening for the presentation is Mr. Steve Bendow, our design consultant with RK & Associates from Cambridge, Ontario. Steve will lead us through the conceptual design for the renovation and will field questions following the presentation. Joining us in the audience this evening is Councillor Stroud from Sydenham Ward and several members of our Rec and Leisure team. Once again, thank you for joining us, and I will turn things over to Steve to introduce the project.
Hello, folks. My name is Steve Bendo, and Laura, I don't think I've been called Mr. Steve Bendo in a long time, so thank you. I think, introducing the project, Nancy, if we could forward to the next slide. I'd like to talk about the key driver of this project. So the City of Kingston has been fortunate enough to be awarded the 2024 Canadian Little League Championships. As a result of this, we're looking at developing this diamond into a facility that can host that event. Currently, the existing facility is geared more towards adult play. By that, I mean there's the existing infield is a 90-foot base path, which also is associated with the fencing that is on the site. Well, there isn't fencing on the site, but for an adult sized diamond at a 90-foot base path, typically you would have a 300+ foot outfield fence. This site with that type of dimension would put any type of play into the adjacent streets. So looking at this facility, it's an excellent spot to do something for a 13U type of facility. So this new facility, what we're looking at is developing it for children 13 years and under, with the flexibility for the age groups from 13 downwards. It's a bit of a challenge for all of those different age groups because there are different base paths, different pitching distances, but overall the dimensions of the site are absolutely perfect for what we're looking at. We can go to the next slide, Nancy. So looking at the timeline for this project, currently we're working on the design development. Part of this obviously is our public consultation session right now. So we're looking at input from the public on and the user groups on the size of the diamond, all the facilities, etc. So we'll be working through the design development and looking at starting construction in the fall of 2022. We anticipate that in the fall, primarily what will happen is the earthworks on the site will be conducted. Any of the infrastructure, water or drainage servicing will be done. Construction completion will be done in the spring of 2023. We would look at things such as finishing the outfield fencing and the sodding at that point, all the finishing touches for this site. The establishment of the field, we will require a year for the grow-in for the turf itself, so that the field will be out of play for a season to develop and grow. And then in the spring of 2024, it will be ready for the opening season for the 13U children in the city, and then the championships, which we anticipate in the summer of 2024. We can go to the next plan. Looking at the context of the site, as you can see, we're looking at developing the diamond in pretty much the same location as the existing diamond. It will be shifted slightly to the south towards Bagot Street and also rotated to ensure that there's a safety zone from the first baseline to Bagot Street for any foul balls. The existing diamond in the blue, you can see there's a 300-foot distance, which indicates the minimum distance for an adult diamond. And you can see it goes into the courthouse property. The diamond that we're looking at developing for the 13U is going to be a 225-foot outfield fence with a 250-foot safety zone, which is shown in the red dashed line. This will ensure that we don't have any balls going into Bagot Street or into Court Street. The existing diamond, the softball diamond at the northeast corner of the site, at the corner of Court Street and West Street, will be maintained with a 225-foot outfield distance. So we'll be able to accommodate both this Little League diamond and that softball diamond that will be for recreational play. Next slide, please. So in developing our plan, there are two different governing standards that we're looking at. First of all is a Little League Canada, and that is the one that we're really focused on for the 2024 championships. Little League Canada is a governing body in Canada for the Little League championships, while Baseball Canada is, I guess you could say, your day-to-day governing body for baseball within Canada. They have very similar requirements. There are some minor differences, but as we look at developing our site, we've been able to capture all of the parameters for each of the organizations within the design of the facility. The next slide. So this is really somewhat of an overview, and I think probably it would be best if we actually just go to the next slide and I could discuss this with the graphic. So for the facility, what we'll first start with is the outfield fence. So 225 feet, both conforms to the Baseball Canada and the Little League Canada requirements for the development of a diamond for 13 and under. It generally meets, well, it does meet the minimum requirements for the older age groups and the requirements for the younger age groups. So it's a very versatile diamond. As part of that versatility, we have to provide on the infield a base path of both a 60 and 70 foot. So you can see that we have the skinned infield large enough to accommodate that. So we'll be able to have various age groups play within this field. Same thing holds true for the pitcher's mound. It's going to be somewhat of an enlarged pitcher's mound that will allow pitching from a 46-foot distance and also a 50-foot distance as per the Little League Canada requirements. And Baseball Canada has also an additional 48-foot requirement. So we're able to cover all the way from the 46 to the 50-foot for that, and then 60-foot to 70-foot for the base paths. The skin of the infield is large enough so that a second base player or a shortstop are able to play within the clay component of the field, where they don't have to sit in the outfield on the grass to actually facilitate proper play of the field. So you're eliminating that chance of the ball skipping off the edge of the skin of the infield. Looking at the facilities around the project, we're looking at having two bullpens, one along the first base, one along the third base, and these will also be similar to the mound on the main diamond. There will be the opportunity to have a 46-foot to a 50-foot pitching distance. The dugouts located along the first and third baseline will be a covered dugout, approximately 30 feet long, 10 feet deep, and that will be able to accommodate a full roster of children as well as the coaches for the games. There is some open space adjacent to the project, primarily behind the backstop and along third baseline. Those areas will be a flatter area where staging can occur for teams and have team meetings. There can also be warm up and stretching in those areas. And then when there's not any play going on, those areas will also be used for just general play area. Behind the backstop, we're looking at having spectator seating For the day-to-day operations, it will accommodate about 125 people. As you can see on the drawing, we do have accessible spaces in there. It will all be paved in behind the backstop to the bleachers, and there'll be a connection, an accessible connection from the diamond to the sidewalk on Daggett Street. We'll go to the next slide, please. A bit of the technical part of the project, and I'll go through this quickly, but currently the diamond on left field drains directly towards the infield. So there are some issues as far as water management on the site and delays in games or shutting down the diamond due to a wet infield. What we're looking at doing is revising the drainage considerably in the left field. There is a slope on the left side of the outfield. We'll be taking that water and directing it towards third baseline away from the infield. Center field and right field will drain out towards the outfield. The infield itself will be, I guess we can say, it will be raised and generally draining from the mound towards each baseline out towards the outfield. Underneath, we're looking throughout the infield to do an infield tile drainage system. And the key advantage of that is generally when a game or a field gets shut down is because the infield does not drain properly. So we want to be able to evacuate that water as quickly as possible to minimize the amount of downtime on this field. The next slide. Although there are not a lot of built elements on this field, I think everyone can probably picture what the actual infield and mound and base paths are going to look like. So there are a couple of items that we'd like to show you here. First of all is the players' benches. So in this photo, you can see this is pretty much identical to what we are looking at doing, having a cantilevered dugout system. And you can see the players' bench in underneath that. Like I said, it's going to be about 30 feet by 10 feet, concrete pad, nice and clean for all of the players and also for maintenance purposes. The second thing we'd like to look at on the next slide is this is a section of the backstop from, if you look at the left-hand side of this drawing, that is considered the center of the backstop. So as you move towards the right, you can see that backstop is about 22.5 feet high. At one point, it steps down to a 10-foot spectator screen. So the bleachers would be behind the two dark black vertical lines that you see, and that step down of the 10-foot screen. To the right of that, we have the dugouts with an 8-foot fence in the front of it. In behind you don't see the roof line of the dugout, which would be at the same elevation as that spectator screen at 10 feet. We just omitted that on this drawing for clarity, but it would cover the entire dugout area with that 8-foot fence in front of the dugout to protect the user groups from any foul balls. From there, it would step down to a 5-foot high chain link fence that would go all the way down the baselines around the outfield, and it would have a poly cap on top. On the bottom left-hand corner of this drawing, you can see the side view of the backstop. So it's 20 foot high vertically, and then there is a bit of an overhang at 135 degrees to give an overall height of 22.5 feet. I think at this point, that is all that we have to show regarding the development of the diamond. Maybe Lori, I don't know if you have anything else that you would like to add to this at this point, and I can turn it over to the other folks to discuss.
I have nothing further to add at this time.
Okay, great. Thank you, Steve and Lori. We will now move into the question and answer period. So please feel free to use the Q&A feature to ask your questions, and I will read that question out and direct it to one of our panelists. You're also welcome to raise your hand. I'll be monitoring for this, and I will acknowledge you when it's time to unmute and ask your question. So we can get started with the first question here. With regards to the fencing, there had been some discussion on aesthetics and making this new facility look classy. Will the fencing be spec'd in the standard galvanized steel or perhaps a black finish for a less industrial and more historical classic look? Steve, can you take that one?
I can take that one. Currently, we have it specified as a galvanized fencing. What we do find is that the galvanized is more durable than a black vinyl coated. I think that as part of the process, we will work with the city to look at some of the items. I would not recommend doing a black vinyl coated for the backstop, just for maintenance purposes. But generally, like I said, the galvanized is more durable than that black vinyl coated. I don't know if Lori, if you want to add any comment to this.
Hi, I agree completely. I think that typically the city does use a lot of galvanized fencing around our baseball and softball diamonds for durability and that long range view to the, I guess the length of time the facility will be with us. We would also like the fencing to match the backstop.
So the next question will be from Councillor Stroud. Please go ahead and unmute your mic.
Thank you. And thanks for the presentation. It's pretty much, I guess, what I expected, having heard the preliminary description. Professional looking little league, smaller size diamond, which fits this space much better than the original diamond, which I can report is quite underused from living nearby. It's not very often an official game is played there. So I think the overall concept it will be quite well accepted by the neighborhood, even the non-baseball enthusiasts and so on. The question is more like the disruption during the construction process, and whether the other side of the field, where there's often softball and there's a softball league that plays there every summer, whether that will be impacted by the construction. I'm assuming this entire diamond area will be off limits for the construction phase. So maybe you could remind us the dates on that, and basically what would be the public access implications for the rest of the park users during the construction phase?
Thank you for your question, Steve. Or Lori, would you like to jump in on that?
I can speak to that. Thanks very much, Councillor Stroud, for that. We anticipate that the 2022 season for baseball will complete before we're ready to start construction. We anticipate construction to start probably towards the end of September this year and to complete, as Steve had mentioned, in spring of 23 with a grow-in period or an establishment period in 23. So during 2023, there will be no booked games for our portion of the site. I do believe the softball diamond will continue to be booked, but it's just the establishment of grass within the outfield and infield areas that we're concerned about. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, am I still on? Yes. Yeah, okay, so the 225-foot fence will be the boundary of the construction zone, I guess, so that the only impact on the softball would be like a deep softball hit that might go into the construction zone, I guess.
Yes, I think you're right. And whether or not Rec and Leisure chooses to close that field down, I'm not sure at this point. That's certainly nothing that I've heard from the folks who are responsible for programming.
Right. Well, that is the question. That's a question that neighborhoods are going to want to know if the softball diamond's going to be usable. So, but we're talking about 2023 and then open for 2024. So it's one summer essentially. And so it's an unknown whether the softball diamond will stay open or not. So maybe if someone could get back to me by email on that question.
Absolutely.
I can pass that on. Thank you.
Okay, the next question will be from David Gordon. Please go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
Hello all. Hello, Councillor Stroud. I'm Dave Gordon. I live around the corner. Can you hear me properly? Can you hear me properly?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Dave Gordon. I live around the corner at 67 Sydenham Street. We've lived in the neighborhood for over 25 years. This is our local park. I'm a big sports fan and support the idea of a better baseball diamond on this site. I think this is a terrific opportunity, and I'm sure I'll be watching the Little League Championships as well. My suggestions for the design team are to we'd like to look at options and consult with the community about ways of maintaining this as a multi-use park. So this park, the cricket field, is part of the larger city park. It's the oldest municipal park in Canada. It's a heritage landscape. It's an incredibly important part of Kingston's built and cultural heritage, and new landscape elements to it are tremendously important. So I presume we have, heritage people on the team designing it, and that the design will be reviewed by the Municipal Heritage Committee. Is that correct? That's my first question.
Lori, would you like to comment on that one?
Certainly. Thanks, Dave, for that question. Yes, certainly. We are responsible for a heritage permit for this site. And it is something that we have spoken to the heritage folks about. There was no immediate red flags, but obviously we will follow through with a full permit application.
Well, great. I think you saw a little bit of the concern earlier, the discussion about a large galvanized fencing thing in the middle of a heritage landscape. It's a bit of an intrusion. The second question is about community use. This space is used, for example, as the outdoor play space for Sydenham Public School, where incidentally my daughter went to school there. Simon Whitfield trained or first learned to run and trained, and the school plays its events on the cricket field. And I'm concerned that if we have a permanently fenced outfield, that it's going to reduce the ability of the space to be used for other community and school events during the period when the Little League is not in action, which is a lot of the year. So I'm hoping that I understand completely the need for a regulation fenced thing for the tournament, but I'm hoping we can explore some options for a removable fence so that during, the 8 months of the year that the Little League is not in operation, the broader green space can be used by the community, the schools, and various other groups. So that was my second question is, can we investigate a removable outfield fence to leave a larger green space available during the 8 months of the year that it's not used for Little League?
Thank you for that. Yes, I hear you. And certainly worthy consideration, something that we will look into, and we'll develop more so in our design development phase.
So I have another question here that came through the chat. Does the diamond and dugout allow for easy wheelchair assistive mobility device access? As well, will the ground be hard packed to allow for easier mobility? Steve, are you able to comment on that?
I can comment on that. So what we have is access from Bagot Street with an asphalt walkway all the way up to the back of the diamond. Within the dugout itself, it is going to be a concrete floor. So we don't have any issues about, typically if it was granular where kids, they swing their feet and create an uneven surface. So it will be a nice even surface within there that is approximately 8 feet wide from the bench, the front of the fence. All of the gates access to the field is going to be 1,500 meters wide, so it'll be fully accessible. And then from the dugout to the diamond, there is a warning track, which will be maintained flush with the concrete. So absolutely, the entire site is totally accessible.
We have another question from David Gordon. Please go ahead and ask your question.
Thanks. Sorry to have so many questions, but I use this park almost every day and it's an important part of the neighborhood. So the next question was one about the location of the diamond itself. If the diamond could be slid back along Bagot Street as far as possible to leave the largest possible green space between the outfield of the baseball field and the outfield of the softball field, that would leave a much better community facility for the future. And in particular, what we'd be looking for is for the option in some parts of the year to actually use it as a multi-sport facility to bring the cricket pitch back once in a while, so that cricket is played on the cricket field. There's an equity, diversity, and inclusion aspect to this in that cricket is now played mainly by people of color in Kingston, and this is the traditional place that it's been played. So if there's any way we can slide this backstop back further along Bagot Street, create a larger green space, it'll be better for all of the community uses that use the cricket field. The space between the backstop and Berry Street is virtually unusable at the moment. It's too wet, it's too weird in shape. Nobody uses that area for anything. So question, can we examine options of moving the entire diamond back further from the current location in order to make a larger shared green space between the softball and the baseball diamond?
Steve, are you able to answer that one?
I can provide some input for that. So Dave, we did look at doing that. One of the key considerations that we have is out in left field. There is an existing slope that cuts across on an angle throughout left field. So if we do shift that diamond further towards Berry Street, we're cutting into that slope more, which creates quite a bit of earthwork. As we do more earthwork, the cost of the project obviously goes up. Another consideration that we looked at was the relationship to the first baseline and Bagot Street. So again, if we start to move that diamond more towards the corner of Bagot and Berry, we start to reduce the distance between first base line and Bagot Street. that's a key consideration for foul balls and anything leaving the site and hitting vehicles. If we do move that diamond a little bit more southwest, we don't really actually gain that much between the two outfield areas from the diamond to the northeast and the diamond we're developing. What we end up doing is actually losing that warm-up area and gathering area behind the diamond that we're looking at developing. We understand that there are drainage issues in behind the backstop right now, and that is going to be taken care of during this site development because we're raising our infield a little bit and then providing more positive drainage away to eliminate that wet area in behind. So I understand what you're looking at. We have looked at some of these technical and cost implications. We've looked at this diamond, Laurie. I think you can say probably about 4 or 5, maybe 6 different configurations, different angles. And we went out on the site and actually staked the entire diamond, and then did tweaks after that to confirm that, you know, I feel like we've kind of hit the sweet spot as to, you know, we're checking as many boxes as we can right now.
So Dave has some questions about drainage. So go ahead and unmute yourself, Dave.
I would certainly wait if there's anybody else with questions.
I don't see any other questions at this time, so please feel free to go ahead.
Thank you, Nancy. Steve's answer is exactly why we're raising these questions at this point. This is not just a once in a lifetime, probably a once in a century opportunity to look at the use of this historic space. And I think it's great that they're proposing infield tile drainage to deal with the wetness down in that corner. And I think it's great that they're looking at earthworks, you know, reshaping the ground slightly. Frankly, these are not that expensive in the larger scheme of, you know, inner city park costs. And I would hope that we can develop options for review by both the councillors and the community for how we can have the cake and eat it too. So we were suggesting sliding it along Bagot Street in a way that didn't interfere with the direction for the foul balls, and to use as much space behind as possible to maximize the opportunity for joint community use in the larger space in between. The design as it is right now is optimized for Little League baseball. And if that's all it's ever going to be, then it's a loss for the community rather than a gain, because it'll be fenced off and taking up entirely the best part of the cricket field for 12 months a year when it's only used for Little League baseball. How many months? 3? 2? So I think that we should have a design for this that can accommodate Little League baseball and be really good for the World Championship, but also be available the other 9-10 months of the year as much as possible for community use, because this it's not just a neighborhood park, it's a city park.
Lori or Steve, do you have any comments to add?
I don't have anything further to add at this point. I think that this is Dave, this is a similar point that you brought up earlier with the fencing and the placement of the diamond, and it's certainly something we'll have a look at.
So next we have a comment from Jeff Hanley. So you can go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
Thanks, Nancy. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
So, David, firstly, thanks. I'm very, as a member of the baseball community that's really excited about this project. It's great to hear from a neighborhood person and Councillor Stroud, yourself as well, that there is some excitement for this. There's always a bit of nervousness that there's going to be some NIMBYism, let's call it, and people not wanting something like this. So just with regards to a couple of David's comments, firstly, the usage period is quite a bit longer than that. It's basically the full 5 months from May to September that programs would be run there. As was mentioned, there's a significant shortage of this size of diamond, and the baseball enrollment in our city is growing exponentially. In the past 4, 5, 6 years since the Blue Jays really started to take off a number of years ago. So there is a need and there's a lot of use. And I think what we're very excited about this project. And so I think there's a balance between some of Mr. Gordon's suggestions about sort of the multi-use concept versus the chance to build a really nice, really classy looking signature baseball facility. And I think if you want to do that, my opinion is it has to be done in a more permanent fashion. So you wouldn't be able to achieve that beautiful, classy, historical blending look if you had some temporary elements in it. It is my own opinion. So I just thought I would mention that, and I understand the desire to be multi-use, but those of us that have traveled for baseball have seen some fantastic facilities in other cities, and we're so excited that the city of Kingston is excited with us about this project. And I just wouldn't want to see the chance to make a really showpiece facility be taken away because we're trying to turn it into a multi-use park when really it's a baseball diamond.
Thank you for your comment. Lori, I will pass it to you if you'd like to comment, and if not, I can move on into the next question.
Please feel free to move to the next question.
Thanks, Lori. So the next question is there a cricket pitch being incorporated, and is there a website they can learn more about this project? So Steve, can you, Lori, would you like to take this one?
Sure, I'll take that one. Several years ago, I'm going to say about 5 years ago, the city installed a cricket pitch at the Memorial Center. So while we do not anticipate a cricket pitch on this site for spatial constraints as much as anything else, there is a pitch available for booking at the Memorial Center.
And the next question is, can you confirm that options and costs will be available for consideration by council and the neighborhood? Lori, can you take that one?
Yes, certainly. I think that we do have a budget for the project as is. Council approved a budget of $750,000 for the project. And some of that would go towards the tournament amenities that may be required as well.
The next question or comment is from Councillor Stroud. Please go ahead.
Hi, guys. I just wanted to, I don't know, I guess comment or respond to something Mr. Hanley said, which concerns me as a district councillor. It's obvious this is a purpose-built diamond for baseball, but it's being placed in a public park, and it isn't reserved for baseball now, and it shouldn't be reserved 100% exclusively for anything in the future, because that is contrary to the way that parks are used in the city of Kingston. The parks belong to everyone, and mixed use is the default model. In this circumstance, this diamond with the fencing still doesn't occupy the entire historic cricket field, right? It occupies a large portion of it, but not all of it. There's space on the Barry Street side, green space there that is used by 2 schools, including where my children go, which is Sydenham Public, and they also went to Cathedral, and both of those schools use this green space. They can use a lot of the space that's not inside the diamond, but there will need to be an examination of how the diamond is shared with the community, because it can't really be sustained as an exclusive field for one user group only. We're putting a major investment into this, and I don't think it will fly at council if it's understood that this will be a roped off area that is only accessible by certain groups. It's a public park. So obviously you don't never want to see damage to any beautiful facility, so there will need to be security cameras and things like that, likely. But its proximity to Queen's University, the reality is all types of different park users are going to use this space, and that's as it should be. I've been involved with Frosh Week activities in the past. They can be destructive to the city park, and I have pointed that out, and I have intervened in those circumstances. When Frosh Week activities are causing damage to city park, I speak up and I try to stop it. So there's a delicate balance here, but I think it's really important for Mr. Hanley to understand that the baseball users of this park are actually, when they're using the park, they're guests of the neighborhood, and that positive relationship has to exist. So we can't start getting into territorial rhetoric, and I really discourage that kind of thinking. And I thought I should try to point out that the neighborhood concerns are valid, and this is a highly used park, and they will continue to be. The neighborhood concerns will continue to be valid throughout the use of this facility. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stroud. The next hand that I see up is David Gordon. You're welcome to unmute.
Sorry, that was a mistake by me. I forgot to lower my hand. I'm putting a final comment in. Don't get me wrong, I'm a baseball fan. I had season tickets for the Jays at the Sky Dome, and I will contribute financially to the cost of this this facility as a gift to the city if it's a multi-use facility.
Okay, I see that Jeff Hanley has raised your hand. You're welcome to go ahead and ask your question.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear
Yeah.
you.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Peter, for clarifying that. And so just a couple of comments, and maybe one of the city representatives can answer this question. I do think we have, in my view, I think we have a distinction here between a public park space and a recreational facility whereby permits are issued and users are paying for the use of that space. So to me, those two things are different. Being able to stroll through a park and play catch with your kids or whatever you want to do, the schools using it, versus similar to an arena where you have to book ice time. It's the same at this, like the user groups have to book and pay for time. So I just didn't want you to think that we thought that we had free reign on this, and or any user group would, because the user groups book and pay for this facility. And I think, you know, Mr. Gordon's comments are indicative of the fact that the neighborhood realizes that, and per Mr. Gordon's comments, enjoys seeing baseball there. You know, it's a beautiful spot. The fact that that diamond is there, frankly, with the lake in the background and Queens in the background and the courthouse in the background was instrumental in helping to secure that Little League Canada Championship. They recognized it's a special spot. And so that's where my comments are coming from when I'm talking about making it a beautiful facility. It's not for exclusivity. It's for a legacy piece for the whole city and everyone to enjoy.
Thank you, everybody. I don't see any other questions for today. So thank you very much for participating. It has been great to share the project with you and to hear from you all of your great questions. We do have an evaluation poll that we would ask you to complete before you leave today. If you don't mind taking a moment. We also invite you to visit Get Involved Kingston tomorrow to add any additional comments to an online survey that will be available until May 12th at 4 p.m. We will be reporting back on this engagement session as well as any other additional comments that we receive from that online survey. This will be posted on the Get Involved Kingston project page. If you have signed up to receive updates about the project, you'll be notified when it's live on the site. And if you haven't signed up to receive those notifications, please go to the Get Involved Kingston project page and sign up to receive project notifications and updates from the project team. So thank you again for taking the time to join us. We'll just leave this poll up for another moment. We really appreciate the time you took to join us today. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.